Hello, we're on. I'm so sorry. Look who's in the house. Oh, wrong way. Look who's in the house. Thank you so much, James, for coming to the Macro Chat Live Show. I'm so happy to have you.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I have to tell you before I start diving in and letting you know who's here, that when I saw your work, I thought, I mean, there's other things that we're going to be showing today, but the first thing I was saying to myself, truthfully, it's that you inspired me. It's like your photography abstracts. I have not seen amazing abstracts as yours in the recent years. How do I say that again? Let me start that over again. When I saw your work, I was like, holy moly, this guy is doing amazing abstracts. And I have not been inspired by abstracts as much as yours in a long time. Does that make better sense?
Thank you so much. That's extremely kind of you to say. I really appreciate that.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I am so honored to have you. And thank you for coming back for take two. Everybody, my mic is working. Woohoo! So let me tell you who's here. So we have Elise from Ireland. She's from Cork. She fights with my husband's family from Kerry County. No, I'm just kidding. Elise, that's an Ireland thing. It's so funny. They are right next to each other. They're Southern Ireland. So Elise, thank you for being here. And then we have Jan. She is in Northeast. So she is over towards your way. You're an AD way. So Jan is here. Thank you, Jan. And then we have Catherine from, let me see if I can say that. Samira? Is it Samina, Georgia? Am I saying that wrong, Catherine? I probably am. Okay, well, Smyrna, see, AD is always helping me with this earbuds right here, you guys. And then we have Otta. I don't know if you told me where you're from. Eddie, he's from St. Helens, UK. Woohoo! Yes. So we have moved our Macro Chat live show down to 1 o'clock, James, because we have a lot of European friends that were like, I'm in bed. It's like, REM time for me. So moved it. I think I might have, when I first talked to you, I said 5 o'clock, but now it is all about, oh, and then Otta's from Iran. See, all over the world.
Wow.
I love it. Very, very cool. Well, they've been inspired by yours too. So we'll have some more people popping up. So James, with this, I'll just let people know a little bit about this show that have never seen the show. Once a month, I have an amazing photographer like we have you on today, and it's about close-up, macro, and micro photography. So today we're diving into James, and before we get started, there's a couple things I want to remind you that next show will be June 25th. We have AD and I will be doing a feedback session. So we do that when we don't have an awesome photographer like you on. And so it's a lot of fun because when people have questions, it helps a lot of people. So that's when we started getting into the feedback sector. And so you have one image today. Do you remember that? I'll share on the screen. We have Debbie's image, so she'll probably jump in, and hopefully Debbie's usually always at these things, so she's probably like, oh my gosh, it's 1 instead of 5. We're getting a lot of people that are thinking it's still 5, so we'll have a lot of replayers. But before we get started, let's do the sponsor, and we will dive into James.
Ready to accomplish your macro photography goals? Our SJP membership will keep you on track, hold you accountable for your goals, and teach you new techniques. This program provides you the value of a college course with the fraction of the price.
For more information, head on to membership.sullivanjphotography.com. It's time to focus on your goals to get you to where you want to be.
So don't miss out.
Okay, so let's get into it. I was typing them all saying thanks for being here. So again, I seriously am just so excited about really chatting about your work. But before we do that, I really love to hear your story. Like, how did you get in from where you started into where you're at now with we'll share your work in a little bit, but I just want to chat with you on how you got started.
I don't think it's really, it's probably not terribly exciting. I'm not sure if it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago now. I just kind of picked up a camera. It wasn't a crazy camera. It was I think it was the Sony A5000 at the time.
Oh,
so yeah, one of the Sony mirrorless series. Just because I thought, it's been a while since I've, had a camera in my hand and taken some pictures. I always kind of liked taking pictures, but it never was a serious thing. And then I got this camera and I got a couple lenses and I just started shooting all the time. It's like I had remembered, exactly how much fun and wonderful photography is. So that went on for a little while, and I was just kind of shooting anything and everything, just playing around. I wasn't, I didn't have an intention to do anything specifically. And then I think it was one of the first winters that I had this camera, and I didn't want to go outside because it was too cold, and I didn't know what to shoot. And I had this little macro lens that I hadn't played too much with, and I just started shooting, and I think that was it. I had so much fun shooting macro, just anything I could find around the house. I just really loved shooting it, and that kind of started the addiction for me. And ever since then, I've been trying to just develop my own niche and my own style in macro photography, and it's been a pretty fun journey so far.
Well, I told you it was laid back, right? We have Coco doing this show.
It's fine by me.
Yeah, this always happens. We have to have at least one bark from her. Geez. But, it's really cool that you found your own niche, like you were saying, and you got addicted. I'm going to share some of your work, but I think why we do that. Well, wait. Before we go and share your work, because I'll share your work when we're going to talk about you actually shooting and some of your post-processing, if you do post-processing. But how did you really, unless I missed it because I was jumping on Coco, how did you find this niche? You know what I mean? You were just playing and it just came on? Because I do like the box. Is it box? Oh, I wrote it in here. It's your signature. I see. It's a signature blocked. It's a block.
Yes. Oh, okay. Is it the one that I'm seeing on the screen at the top here, or is it is it one of the? Okay, I forget half of the title.
Well, you always seem to have that in a lot of your.
Oh, you mean just just I was. It's funny because I don't really fully know why I'm such attracted to, cubes and blocks. I have no idea. I like looking at them in different ways because it seems like something that might be just something extremely boring or mundane. But I just like shape and form and texture. And with something as simple as a block, you can really play around with, how can I make this interesting? And I think maybe that's why I tend to shoot them as much as I do. Now, it's not all, I don't just shoot blocks, but they tend to pop up in a lot of my work. And I don't know if there's some deeper reason behind that. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I should see a psychiatrist or something. But yeah, I don't know. I just like the form, the simplicity of a block. It just is something that I'm attracted to for some reason.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, you guys. Okay, wait. Are you ready? Are you ready? Because I know I am. Let's go. Karen, nice to see you, Karen. She's in the fine art. She's definitely going to love this one. So, okay, so let's go in and look at. We'll definitely dive into your images, James. I'm going to show a little bit of black and white now. So, AD, you could share the screen, and we will dive in. Or you are sharing the screen. I'm looking at James up at the top. There's Skype has 3 different things going on. So, so the black and white, I wanted to start with black and white too at first. But really, I'd like to talk about your thought process. I'll just jump around a little bit. But if you see something that you really want me to dive into, then just let me know, because I would love to know your thought process as you're working on your beautiful work. It's really, really cool to see. Yeah, no, you're welcome. Are you serious? Yeah. I mean, I'll just jump into. How about if I jump into one of my favorite? There are a lot of them. These are all like my favorite. I just had so much fun enjoying your work. Yeah, like what's your thought process while you're photographing? Are you just going with the flow? How are you doing? You know, when you say you want to push that shutter button.
It's kind of like I would say it's maybe like treasure hunting for me, because most of my photos require me to make something or do something myself before I shoot it. So I will actually, play around with things and experiment with things in order to have something to shoot. Because with insect photography or any type of macro photography, a lot of the time you're going out to find something that exists. But for me, because maybe my mind is just so weird, I make these weird things just for the purpose of being able to shoot them. And yeah, I can see now that you're scrolling through things. I can see I shoot cubes a lot. Yeah, I guess.
I love it. It's your signature.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, these are all things that'll just make. Some of them are sculpted, like little miniature sculpture. Some things are 3D printed, and I'll put resins and inks interacting with them, and they kind of create these very dynamic, chaotic, but I think in some cases beautiful images. And every time after the fact, I'll kind of see how. What I can find in there, see what kind of compositions I can find, and yeah, it's just like finding little treasures. It's addictive. I would say that's what I guess keeps me going. Is I just always want that dopamine, fix. Because every time you find something, it's like finding a little treasure, and you do it, and then as soon as it's over, you have to find another one. And I think that's why it's just I'm hooked on it.
So when you shoot this, these are inks. Like when you do this can never happen again, because is there movement on? Are you moving this info? I mean, how is this ink and it's moving? So like once this is shot, that's it, or let me know a little bit. I'm just curious. Like look at this one. This one you could tell it looks like it's moving. This is so cool. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Actually, you'd probably be surprised to know that when a lot of these shots were taken, everything was completely frozen in place. Because when you mix certain inks, alcohol inks and pigments with resin, once the resin hardens, the ink is completely frozen in these forms, and then you can adjust your lighting, and you don't have to worry about shutter speeds at all. You can really kind of take your time. I guess the trick for me is that that after a while I started doing that, and that was a lot of fun. But then it felt like things were going to get stale pretty fast for me. Mm-hmm. So I needed to start experimenting and really finding a way to kind of push that style. So that involves changing the temperature of the inks and resins at certain times to get certain effects with the ink, or the sculpture, or the objects that I place and how I place them, and the lighting. A lot more of that started to get into it after a while, so that I could kind of really hone in on things that had a little bit more form and shape, if that makes any sense.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. I love it. I love it. Yeah, that is so cool. How fun. It's like a science project, a creative science project, and then you're, photographing it. Oh, I just love it. I had no idea. It looks like Debbie says that her sister does that and makes jewelry with her alcohol inks and resin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how fun is that? Well, I just love your creativity, because oh gosh, this is so beautiful. And when you see something that you like, it's just plain, and then you're like, okay, this is cool to shoot. Is that what you do after like it's dried, or do you play with it? I'm so curious, because you have such a great, to me, it's like a creative eye. Somebody could just throw things in, but it flows nicely, your shots. Yeah, it does.
I guess that would be the thing is that anybody could make these and shoot them, and a lot of times you'd probably get really wonderful shots out of them. But like I said, after a while, I just kind of, I needed more out of that technique. And so over the past 2 or 3 years now, I think I've just been playing around and experimenting, and I've gotten much closer to a kind of a workflow where I can really start introducing new things and techniques to kind of put my own spin on it. So
oh my gosh, that's so fun. Now, when it comes to post-processing, do you do a lot of post-processing, or how does that work when it comes into your work? This is a new one. I haven't seen this one.
Oh, yeah,
Very cool.
That's actually a very, very small shard of glass. I shot that with a 5:1 macro, so that's actually extremely close. So you nobody might not think that it was, that's actually glass and inks and pigments, but yeah, that's what that one is.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So you stack your work when you shoot?
Oftentimes, yeah, I will. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's I would say the ratio of stacking to non-stacking is probably I do a lot more stacking than not. But some images just look really nice with a really shallow depth of field. But you can, I mean, you don't have to stack a whole image either. You can always just do selective stacking. So that's.
Yeah, this is perfect one right here. Like you're saying, like if this was stacking, you left that soft, it just looks beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes you really want to separate that foreground object, which seems almost weird to say when you're talking about macro this close. But yeah, the foreground object needs to be, or maybe sometimes it's better if it's separated. And so, you just use your kind of creative judgment on that. But yeah.
So so let's touch base on the post-processing. Do you do look at this, you guys. So fun. I just love how you draw the line to the red line, the squiggles and it coming in. I mean, this is so absolutely, I'm serious. I have not seen an abstract photographer that has really floated my boat for a long time, because I think it's so creative and colorful and beautiful. I mean, so when you do post-processing, what do you do about that? I'm kind of curious on your thought process on that type of stuff.
I guess I don't really have, it really just depends on the image. I do post-processing oftentimes in a lot of these shots. There are tiny kind of particles or debris that you would only pick up with a macro lens. So there's usually clean, like spot touch up on those. And depending on the image, it's just adjusting some levels and some color correction. But besides that, there's not really a whole lot of post-processing. If sometimes I get images that I like, but there's just too much debris in the shot, or it's just not right, and I usually tend to just kind of scrap those, even though there might be a great image there. If I have to do too much touching up, I almost kind of, maybe it's just because I'm a little bit lazy, or I'm not sure.
You want
but
to
I'll
make
be like,
more
okay.
of these, right? You want to make more of these instead of being behind the camera.
Yeah, and also sometimes I set those ones off to the side for a rainy day if I just feel like, okay, I'm gonna spend a lot of time touching this one up because I like it. But usually, if there's too much touch up involved, then I just kind of put it off to the side. So.
Yeah, I get it. So I'm showing color right now, you guys. I'm going to go into the black and white. That's just because I'm drawn to color, but your black and white's beautiful too.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, how fun. I would love to watch you do this. It would be such a blast for you to see something like that. Look at that one too. See this one, when I look at your work, and I really get into, obviously, photography and art. I was an art major in college. And this right here just totally this is like, to me, this is a James image right here, because it's got everything that is just, to me, very, very cool. Let's share some of your black and white with others. And this is what you're saying too, like it's just a regular, like you say, the block, but you're lighting it and enjoying the texture. It's just, yeah. So now with your black, do you just shoot these? I'm curious. Do you shoot these thinking that you're going to do black and white, or you just kind of photograph and say, oh, you know what? I think this would look good as a black and white, or because it's I'm curious. Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. Sometimes, So for instance, the first one, the close up of the cube at the top, I knew that I was gonna shoot that for black and white, just because once I that's actually a very, very small little like magnetic cube. So I think it's about 2 millimeters per side. So it's very small. And when you're looking at it, you could fit like 8 of them on your thumbnail. And so I remember looking at it, and it looks perfectly smooth and shiny. And when I got it under the 5:1 Laowa macro, I could see all this detail, and I thought, wow, I'm going to shoot that in black and white, just because, when you shoot in black and white with kind of dramatic lighting and good texture, I think black and white just tends to make something really pop sometimes. So I knew I was going to shoot that in black and white, and that the lens was actually a gift from my dad, and I think that was the first thing that I really shot with that lens, was that photo stack. And I think that is actually a photo stack of about 59 images, just because the depth of field was so shallow with that lens while I was shooting it that just to even get this very, very small cube took so many shots. But
oh, I believe it. So how do you photo stack? What software do you use when you?
I use a software called Helicon or Helicon. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Yep, it's a wonder. It works for me. I haven't tried. I did try a little bit of photo stacking in Photoshop, but I kind of went for something more specific after the fact. It's definitely worth it to have a dedicated software for photo stacking, I think.
Yes. Do you use the Helicon remote also? It's the one where you could plug into or do you just doing it with your eyes when you're photo stacking? I'm curious.
I'm just doing it with my eyes. I have thought about a couple products. There's one called StackShot.
Yes, I've heard of that. My husband's like, get it. I'm like, I haven't yet. I haven't tried.
I thought, I should invest in that because, you can let it go and it kind of removes any sort of user error. So you don't have to worry if you made a mistake, 40 shots in. And then I started thinking, I kind of like the tedium and the patience of photo stacking. It kind of forces you to be present. If that makes any sense.
Yes,
you're just kind of there,
does.
observing it. It's almost like a little meditation when you're photo stacking. So I'm maybe one day, but for now, I think I'm just fine doing it the old-fashioned way.
You know what? Maybe that's my reason. This whole time I'm thinking, going on the cusp, should I not? But I also enjoy that. Is this a teeny little thing that you made, this guy right here? Is it one of those small little 3D object things? Is this guy right here?
Yeah, well, that was actually, those people have model train sets and the dioramas and all the scenery around. I think I went to a local hobby store and I picked up one of a pack of just these little figures, and they're very, very, very small. And this one I kind of set up on this landscape that I modeled some polymer clay over top of, and then I spray painted the whole thing black just because I knew it was going to be shot in black and white. And then I had some mist vapor thing that I kind of blew some vapor over, and I just got an image, and I don't know why. I don't know if there's any sort of significance, but it just kind of was an image that I had in my head, and I did my best to shoot it. So
yeah, that's wonderful, and it's so cool to be able to see. That's why I love the macro show, because we're just so dedicated into the small. I knew, I'm like, because you can kind of see right here where it was made. And AD, when we get off, AD is going to tell you all about. He does 3D stuff. He's going to watch it. Okay. You guys will have some more conversation. Here's some of the black and whites. Oh, see, now here's these are just beautiful. I do. Oh, we have some questions. Yes, sorry. I get so involved, you guys. I really apologize. AD said we had some questions. So let's go in here. Do you use a macro rail? Debbie wants to know.
I do. Oh. It's not I can't even remember the brand right now. It was just one that I got off of Amazon, and it looked like the reviews were pretty okay. So this is when I first started focus stacking. So I didn't want to spend too much money on one. But yeah, I use a focus rail, and I couldn't live without it.
I can't stand doing macro without a focus rail. Any of you guys else start popping up your questions, because we're going to come back. We're going to definitely start going into questions, and then we're going to we're going to talk. And Debbie is here. Debbie's the one that you're going to be helping her with on her image that she has provided. So okay. She says, I'm looking to buy one if anyone has a recommendation. I like my Novaflex. That's what I have. But, I thought I had lost it, and I was so upset because I'm like, oh my gosh, because, you have to go in and out. And when you make this teeny little minutes, I'm like, forget that. I'm not going to be using, my lens. But yeah, look at how beautiful. I just love the grace and the lighting. Okay, so when you're doing this, because when you're shooting this, are you using special lights, or are you just using natural light and moving your subjects over? Because I am curious about your lighting techniques.
Well, if I'm doing focus stacking, I usually don't use natural lighting too much because where I'm shooting, usually upstairs in my office, mm-hmm. the lighting, the natural lighting can vary because we have trees around, and you never know if the clouds are going to go over, and you don't want to have wildly different, kind of lighting or exposure in your stack shots. So I usually rely. Forever, I just kind of had this kind of cheapo adjustable LED desk lamp, and that's what I shot with, just because it's what I had, and it seemed to work for me. I recently picked up something called an Adaptilux, and it's kind of this little pod that has 5 different LED adjustable lights that come out, and I've just started using that in the past couple weeks. So, but most of the shots you've seen are just a combination of just one LED light and maybe 2. It depends.
Well, maybe in the equipment segment, if it's close by, you can run and get that when we get to that segment. If you that sounds good. Look at the horse. Okay, you guys, let me just get this going, because we got to dive into. We got a lot going, but you could tell I really like his work, right? Right, everyone. Let's go back to us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I want to ask you. Let's see. I want to ask you real quick. How do you keep motivated? Is it just because you just love what you're doing? We all have these little lulls sometimes. So, this is a portion that I love to ask photographers like you that are really into, a special something here. And it's because we all get in there. So what would you suggest to the people that are watching right now, when you get in that lull? How do you keep yourself motivated to keep going?
It's a great question. There is times, sometimes there'll be a week that goes by where I don't really feel like shooting. I don't know why. I just don't have that kind of creative spark. And I usually just give myself a little bit of breathing room. So if I feel like I'm really not into it, I'll just, take a couple of days. Because I know eventually I'll go back to it. If you love shooting, you're going to start shooting. Something's going to pop into your head, or you're going to just have that itch. If you really love shooting. So I guess I would just say give yourself a little bit of space, or at least that works for me. And then after that, you can say, oh, you know what, I'm ready. Let's get back to it. But I guess it works differently for different people. Some people work better if they force themselves to do something to get over, that hurdle. For me, I'll give myself a little bit of space, and I'll say, in a couple of days when I'm really, when I have an idea or the creative juices are flowing again, I'll hop back into it. But
yeah, that's good though, because you're obviously making just these beautiful pieces. So for you, that's working. It could work for others. I think that if the other way's not working, where they keep trying, then you guys pay attention to James and take a little break, and then get back to it.
Yeah, it's whatever works. I guess you just have to be maybe honest with yourself and think, do I work? Do I work better if I'm like pushing myself even though I don't want to do it, or is I guess you just have to kind of trust your wisdom and your own habits to see what works best for you.
Right, exactly. Well, we are ready. Do we have any? Let me see if there's any other questions. Let's see. No worries, Baz. Baz is from England. He's here. Woo-hoo. Nice to see you, Baz. He was saying something about he post pics. We could look at that next week, though. Oh, the next show. Yeah, no worries. So, yeah. Okay. Well, what we're going to do is let's go on to the critique segment. we are going to be checking out, I don't know which size it goes, but we're going to be checking out Debbie's image, and I'm going to read this. And what I really like, I only added the one image right now for the segment. Normally I only do 2, maybe 3. But what I feel like when it comes to abstract, it really is personal when it comes to abstract. So I'm going to read what Debbie wrote, and then she would like some help from you, because you really do have a great eye for abstract, for sure. There's no two ways about it. So Debbie says, let's see, she's calling this photo Under the Sea. I took the photograph of a bunch of beach glass that I have in a clear bottle. The colors of beach glass were varied, but mostly greens, whites. She goes, greens, whites, and I did have a few brown pieces. But the bottle in my kitchen counter, let's see, I put the bottle on, I should have read this before, so then I would have been in my mind. So I'm sorry, Debbie, I'm butchering your stuff. She says, I put the bottle on my kitchen counter backlight with bright sun streaming through the bottle. I took the photo handheld with my 100 millimeter lens, ISO 100 f4 at 1/80th of a second. I wasn't concerned about my shutter speed being lower than my focal length, since I knew this was going to be an abstract photograph, so I was fine if there was going to be a bit of softness and blur. I tried various angles and positions until I came across what you see here. I love how the top portion of the image looked like it would if it was under the ocean looking up at the surface. The bottom of the image made me feel like I was at the bottom of the ocean with some rocks. It just made me imagine what it would be like to be under a sea looking up. The reason I was hooked on this image was mainly because of the 2 brown shapes, which I felt created a nice contrast to the rest of the colors. I also liked the coloration of some of the glass, how some of the glass was hit by the light and created an effect of bubbles. Something that one would see if they were actually deep under the sea looking up. I would like to know from James' thoughts as to, I would like to know James's thoughts as to, is there anything different I could have done with my aperture that may have changed the look of the image? Also, I would like to know if he has any suggestion to the composition that would enhance or give it another feeling or story. So this is her question to you. If you want to go for it, and then maybe what happened? Oops, sorry, there it goes.
Okay.
I went missing for a sec.
Well, first of all, this is a wonderful abstract image. It looks almost painterly to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the first part of the question was that what effect you could have changing your aperture. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sorry, do you recall, Janice, what she said her app was when she shot it?
Yeah, I think it was f4.
F4. Well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the thing that my eye draws towards is the orange piece. There's a little line, kind of looks like a little edge, and that's there's the large kind of darker blue shape that kind of funnels into that orange piece. So that's where the image is drawing my eye. Gotcha. I'm curious if you really opened up that aperture, I guess depending on the lens, you could really get this very, very, very finite, sharp section of that photograph that might look really interesting. And what I should say, these are obviously just random suggestions that I'm thinking of because abstract imagery, especially one very abstract like this, these are just different ideas that we can bounce off of you. You can kind of decide what you like best and whatnot. Or I wonder even what a focus stack would look like with this.
Yeah, I think that would be so much fun to have like this focus stacked and then it like spill out into if it was spilling out or something into the ocean. I like what your idea is, like if she had this stacked in here and then it or even the reverse, like this is stacked and then all of a sudden it was blurry. You know what I mean? Just to give it some depth or some movement, I guess,
And it is kind of tricky without actually, because I'm trying to picture exactly what it looks like outside of this image. So if the objects that she was shooting, I'm trying to kind of imagine the bottle and the space and how I would kind of approach shooting it. But yeah, it's a very interesting image. It's truly abstract. It's wonderful. And
yeah, she
as far
said
as
thank you. She goes. She says, I never thought of using a focus stack. Great idea. She loves that idea. See?
Well,
yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It might work. It might not. I mean, you might like it. You might not. But it's definitely with abstract images like this, especially with something where you could shoot it a million different ways. A glass bottle in the sun, with the stones in it. I'm sure there's a million different shots you could kind of get out of that with a macro lens. So yeah, it's definitely worthwhile to play around. And another thing that might be fun to experiment with a shot like this is you mentioned it was handheld and you weren't too worried about your shutter speed because it was an abstract image. I've never tried it myself, but I've seen people do wonderful controlled blurred images. So it's basically when you set your shutter speed and you kind of just pan up a little bit or pan down, and you get these really wonderful kind of like strokes of the light and the objects. And that might be something fun to try with something like this too, because it almost reminds me of that.
Yeah, it does, huh? It's so pretty. It does definitely look like it's ocean because of the lighting.
Definitely.
Like if it was water. Yeah, that's very cool. She did say, let me see. Okay, so she would like to know anything about do you think maybe a composition may change it? What do you think about her composition? I guess she was wanting to know if it could be enhanced with this one. I mean, I can always go into Lightroom, and if you want me to do any cropping or anything like that, if you have suggestions, we can always do that. So it's up to you.
Yeah. Well, like I said, in an abstract image, I think often it really is much more a matter of taste or personal preference because, in certain other genres of photography, you're focused a lot more. You have to stay focused a lot more on how technically well done it is, how sharp things are, lighting, composition. But in abstract, you kind of have freedom to express the image in the way that you want, free of a lot of those constraints. So if I was looking at this image, for me, my tendency would be to bump up the imagery or the objects in the bottom just a little bit more. So I would have probably panned my camera down a little bit so that this orange was jumping up just a little bit, a little bit higher, going along the rule of thirds. If this was kind of split up that way, I would at least see what that looks like. And maybe I might crop out a little bit of the top. There is a pretty wide amount or tall amount of the blue, which is fine if that's what you're going for. But for me, I'd like to see it maybe just if the top, a little slice of the top was cropped out, just so that that bottom imagery, the stones would be bumped up vertically just a little bit.
Yeah, let's play with that. I'm curious. Yeah. I'm just playing. I like to do this. It's so much fun to just enjoy people's work and just play around. But yeah, it is a beauty. I you know what I just love your idea of the stacking and then having it blur. That would just I love that idea. This is beautiful though, Debbie. I really like it. I think it's gorgeous. I totally think it's a beautiful, beautiful image. So thank you so much, Debbie, for sharing. If anybody else has any questions or anything like that, let me know. And because we're going to talk about equipment now. We're going to go into equipment time. So So this is a time frame where we get to dive in, James. This is where a lot of people, even though we know the equipment is not what makes the image, sometimes the equipment really does help us make the image easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Agreed.
So let us know, what are your favorite tools that you enjoy and use for your creations? That would be really awesome to share with everyone.
Okay. So in regards to actually shooting, I use a Sony A7R II at the moment. I would love to upgrade to, the AR3 or the AR4, but that's we'll wait for another time for that.
There's always something that we want, right? I mean,
You
it
have
never
to
fails.
avoid. Yeah, what is it? Gear acquisition syndrome is something that you have to watch out for, because there's always going to be really spiffy equipment that you could definitely use and enjoy, but you have to ask yourself if it's 100% necessary or not. But luckily, I'm totally satisfied with with what I'm shooting. So I use the A7R II as my camera body. And the two lenses I usually switch back and forth between. I have a Sony 90mm 2.8 macro. It's their G lens, and I use a Laowa 25mm 5:1 macro lens. So I'll usually just pretty much exclusively shoot back and forth between those lenses. We touched base on the focus rails. So
Yes.
I have a two-way or a four-way, I guess, focus rail.
Oh.
And like I said, I can't live without it, because even if I'm not doing stacking, just being able to pan the camera left or right and zoom it forward just with the twist of a little knob I wouldn't ever imagine doing anything else for shooting macro, even if like I said, I wasn't stacking.
Can I ask you do you even if you have to walk away, because I could chat to everyone, do you have that I'd love to see that stacking and the lighting that you were talking about?
Yeah, sure. It's just a hop away. Hold on one second.
Yay! I love to see the equipment, you guys. So we're going to let him get his stuff and he'll come back. And let's see. I will look at the chat while he's grabbing his goodies, because it's so... Yeah, oh, you're seeing the alien. Karen says, I see the alien too. So who's the one that saw the alien? I love to go back to the chats afterward, you guys. You're so much fun to enjoy, to look at everything. Yes, thank you so much, James.
Yeah, so I actually have this attached on my my tripod right now, but it's this guy. I'm not sure if you can see.
You might have to get up close, because I think you have that blurry thing that's going on.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Look at that, you guys.
So just it's two different rails kind of attached to one another, and you can slide it back and forth and go forward and backwards. And that's it's a pretty simple one. I think this is a new year, maybe.
Oh, good. Yes.
So.
And you like it? It works really well. So it moves the. I mean, that's a big thing. I feel like I've always said to myself that I've always wanted the side, because I only have the front and back. I don't have the side, and sometimes it's like frustrating.
If you do a lot of focus stacking, I would definitely get one that goes sideways as well. I think with certain brands, you can stack, even if it's just a two-way rail, you can stack them both. So one's going one way and one's going the other way. I'm not sure if they all do or how many do that, but I've seen it done before.
Yeah, I need to get something like that. I really love what you have where you're saying that it goes up and back and sideways. That's really cool.
Yeah, I said, even if you're not stacking, it's just so handy to be able to just make minute, adjustments in position with macro.
Yeah. Do you have the light that you were talking about?
Yes, I do. Hold on, I'll grab it here.
Because lighting is always such a difficult thing for macro. I think it's the rails and the lighting. It's like we know that we need the macro lenses, but to help us. Yeah, let me see what you got. I'm so excited.
Okay, so it's this little pod here, and this is called an Adaptilux. I'm still putting it through its paces. Like I said, I've only been using it for a couple weeks, so I'm not necessarily plugging it yet. But so these holes, you take these kind of adjustable flexible LED lighting arms, and you'll put it into the holes, and then you can have your light. And so this is really handy for macro because you can kind of adjust your lighting in very specific ways, and it's pretty unobtrusive, so you can get your lights really close to your subjects, and that's half the battle right there when you're shooting macro subjects, is finding a light that you can get good control over without compromising your composition and where your camera is. And so it's been pretty handy so far. I'm pretty pleased with it.
Wow. Now, so is that made for photographers then? Because I've never seen that before. That's so cool.
Yep, it is. I think I think it's a company that is in the UK, but I'm not 100% sure. I believe they are. And it's specifically made for photographers. So if you check out Adapt Deluxe, if you kind of Google that, you'll probably find them pretty easily online. And they have a decent amount of videos that kind of showcase different types of macro shooting that you can do using their lights, and if anything, it's just good to kind of get new ideas of stuff to shoot. So yeah.
Oh yeah, and you know what I like about it too? It looks like you can have several different lights. I mean, you have the one, but they give you a whole bunch of slots. It looks like you can have several.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the front.
You can have up to. Let me just grab it again. You can have up to 5 in there.
Wow.
That can, depending on what you're shooting. I mean, I don't, since I've had it, I've never used really more than 2 or 3, because once you start getting, more than that, the lighting starts getting a little bit cumbersome to work with. But it depends on what you're shooting for sure. It is good. I've wanted one for a while. They are pretty pricey. So anybody who's interested in them, just be aware when you go to the website. They're probably more expensive than some people might think they would be, but it's been pretty handy so far.
Cool. Well, we'll put that link down below after the show so people can look at it. That's amazing. Anything that you can find to help macro photographers with lighting, it's really cool. Anything else that you love to share with us that just really makes things, makes your life a lot easier? I would love to know.
I think. Well, I mean, I shoot. I do my processing in Lightroom, which is probably not a surprise to many people out there. It's one of the main kind of staple programs. That's Helicon Focus or Helicon Focus. I wouldn't be able to live without that program for sure. My equipment is pretty simple. Like I said, I just have the couple lenses that I shoot with, and I have this is the Laowa 5:1 macro lens.
Oh yeah,
so you get quite close with that, and this was, like I said, a gift from my dad, and it's wonderful. So I've been shooting a lot with that lately.
That's another one that I've been debating. I really want to get the 5:1 because I'm always putting adapters on my macro lenses, because I want to get up closer.
Yeah, so I used to use extension tubes, and they're nice. They're definitely handy to use, but having a lens that lets you get literally as close as you probably would want in most cases is a lot of fun to play with. Even anybody out there who just, these lenses aren't too expensive in the big scheme of things. So you get one, and you'd have so much fun even just casually looking around the house or outside, just because when you get that close, you're seeing things in a whole new kind of world. So it's really fun to play around with those lenses because you start seeing details that you'd never realize you'd see in everyday kind of ordinary objects.
Yeah, and to know that when I look at your work, I know even when you see the human. Well, I didn't know about that square though. I didn't realize it was that small. The cube that you had, what you said that was really teeny. I swear. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not really blonde. No, just kidding. That's a joke. I don't want to hear any blonde people say, no, I'm just joking. Let's see if anybody has any questions when it comes to that's a big whiskey. That's hilarious. Baz and I always like to joke about drinking, because I always, at the night shows, I would have like baby wine or a drink, and I'd be like, cheers, because, I like to, but now at 1 o'clock, I think it's a little early for me, but we still like, it's okay for him. And so when it looks like when he saw your lens, he's like, that's a big whiskey. Yeah, that's hilarious. You know what? And then AD put the link in for that, for the lens. You know, that company's really cool because they also have that. Did you ever see that one that's like, you could put it in water and it's thousands of dollars for that thing?
I would like to get all of their macro lenses, and I have to kind of, once again, like I said, I have to hold off because, yeah, you know, you could spend so much money on gear if you wanted to, but that lens looks amazing. I would love to play around with that lens. They also have a wide angle, I think it's a 15 millimeter wide angle, and it's also a tilt shift lens, and it looks so much fun to use because it's a wide angle, and getting wide angle shots like that on macro would be so much fun to play with. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe one of these days I'll bite the bullet and I'll make another purchase of some macro lenses. But
yeah. I would love to see your work. If you do buy a wide angle lens and you start shooting with it, make sure you connect with me and say, hey, Janice, because I'll have you on the show again. Because a couple photographers have said, hey, if they're doing something, I'm like, you guys are more than welcome to come back on the show if you got something new to share, like a new way of photographing or a portfolio that you want to share. And because that's what this is about. This is about getting us creative and trying new things and getting to meet you. That, you know, this is really cool. Oh, I do have, so when I do have one question, and it's kind of like, it's about your photography. So I didn't know it was resin and 3D stuff. So, I mean, do you, is that what you just like to, is that what you just were like, oh, I just want to do some 3D stuff, and then you just put in ink and you're like, oh, this is cool. I'm just kind of curious on this. I know that it was like at the beginning of the show, but I just feel like it's so interesting that you're using resin and inks and all that stuff, and you made it into a whole amazing portfolio. So, I mean, how did that like click? It's like
I said, I think I just saw a YouTube video one day, and they were doing, they had close-ups, and I thought, wow, that looks wild, that looks trippy and beautiful, and I thought I would just love to put a macro lens in front of that. And then I started shooting a lot of that stuff because they're kind of so fun to make, and you never know exactly what you're going to get. And after a while, it's like, okay, I think I've kind of like exhausted this idea, you know. But then I started just tossing stuff in there, and and that got the kind of mental process going of, if I wanted to actually start doing more specific things using this technique, how would I go about doing that? And that's kind of how I've been focusing on ever since. So a lot of times I'll do them, and I'll get a couple usable shots out of them, but to me, it doesn't feel like it's anything special. Now I try to plan things a little bit more, and I've tried to experiment in ways that I can get a little bit more control, a little bit better idea of how things are going to come out, because sometimes you'll have this great idea and you put in the resin and the pigments, but because it behaves in a very kind of its own way, you don't, it's no guarantee at all that you're going to get the shot that you wanted to get. So I've been doing a lot of experimenting and trying to hone in on getting a little bit more control over the way that those materials kind of behave with one another. So yeah, right. If that makes any sense. Sorry,
no, it does. Totally, not at all. No, not at all. Because it gives other people ideas, not even just to what you're doing, but next time when you guys watch a YouTube video, think of James and like when he saw something up close and was like, wow, this is interesting. I think I'm going to go a step farther, and then just start going with it. And you just built this beautiful thing. I do have to say though, see, when I look at you guys, all of the photographers that come in, I just love it. Before I ask you guys to come in, I always do a lot of research and stuff. And one of the things that I found that was really interesting that I have to tell you, and then we'll start wrapping things up. But I have to tell you, one of the comments that you had said is, someone said, oh, I just love your work. And you said, oh, I really appreciate that. The key is time, patience, and a little bit of luck. And I thought to myself, there is no way luck is involved with this. I see what you're saying, but what I'm saying is you know when it's a good abstract that excites others also. It may, it's exciting you, but I just want to thank you for exciting me and I'm sure many other photographers that are out there. It's really, really cool. Yeah, I'm like, that comment right there was a trip. I was like, he's not luck.
Well,
It's
thank you.
not
I'm
luck.
sorry. The audio's.
Oh, did it give you some funky? I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, sorry, I wasn't sure if it was. Yeah, I can hear you. It was cutting out a little bit, so I might have lost a little bit of what you were saying there. But if I heard correctly, it was about the comment of the time, patience, and luck, and you said some very nice things after that. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, in regards to that, I would just say that everybody has to train their eye to see things, especially in abstract, that that gets their motor going. It's just training your eye to see things that you think look beautiful or striking or provocative, whatever the case, whatever you're going for. So yeah, it isn't just luck, but I do think with abstract a lot of time, because I mentioned that I kind of compare it to treasure hunting, is the luck comes in with if I can find something. If I get lucky, I see something, and that's a little bit lucky to me, because wow, I found this. I didn't know I was going to see this exactly. Yep. So if I really like that and I'm able to shoot it, then that's where kind of the luck comes in. But yeah, definitely it's a mixture of those kinds of things for me.
Awesome. Elise has a question. She says, I've always loved abstract, but never really known where to start. Do you have any starting points, James? That's what she's asking you.
I would say, if it's anything like me, I would say don't even worry about a specific starting point other than get your camera in front of anything and just have a really playful attitude. Just take the pressure off yourself in the beginning completely, because it doesn't matter. Just start playing, and that's kind of how it started for me. So if you enjoy that playfulness, that I can shoot whatever I want, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to look for interesting angles in things, or the way light plays off something, or movement, anything. Just start looking and see what you can kind of discover, because that's the fun part, is discovering things and playing around with making things look different than they might seem otherwise. So I think having a playful attitude is definitely one of the most important things when you're starting out. And then after that, your kind of eye is going to gravitate towards certain things. Maybe it's going to be texture. Maybe it's going to be, the way lighting is reflecting or hitting certain objects, and you'll develop your own kind of eye and taste for what you like in abstract. That's speaking from my own experience, I guess.
That's awesome. Debbie says you have really inspired me. That's what she says. That's so cool.
Oh,
yeah, that's awesome.
Very, very flattered. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's fun to really get the tips and stuff because you're real. Like I say, your abstracts are just crazy good. I wanted to ask you: is there anything in the future that you're going for besides maybe getting a different lens? Are you planning? Is there anything else? Do you teach, or are you just making work, or for your fulfillment? I'm just curious towards the end, because sometimes if there's something going on, I always love to know and share it with everybody that's watching.
Thank you very much for asking. I'm kind of just going with the flow at the moment. I probably could spend a lot more time with self-promotion and the administrative aspects to being a photographer, but I do have another full-time job, and I just love shooting so much that's what I want to be doing. I do I don't really have anything specific planned. I'm just kind of enjoying what I'm shooting. So
that's cool.
We'll see what happens in the future. Yeah, I do kind of a post a day thing on my Instagram and on my Twitter. But other than that, I do some photography for a website and a gallery called Super Rare, and it's kind of crypto art. So I do that as well. But yeah.
We'll have to put those links down below. We'll get your Instagram. We'll get all the stuff. You know, I'll send you an email, just a reminder, and then this way people can follow you and, you know, keep up with your work. And I definitely want to know if you get into the wide angle. I'm curious. I can't wait to see what you come up with.
I'll definitely drop you a line for sure. Because yeah, it's you know, it's wonderful that you have this show because you know, there's, you know, macro photography is a niche, and it's just wonderful to have a spot that people can go to really kind of catch up on it and get passionate about it. So it's, yeah, this show is awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. You know, I started this show because I wanted to look at just the macro world, up close and stuff. And there was a lot of shows that I watched and stuff. And then I heard one photographer, I'll never say his name, and he said, oh, that's just something, nobody really gets really into that. And I thought, oh, yeah? Well, guess what? There's a lot of people that get into it. So that's why I started the show. I was just like, no, macro, close-up, and micro photographers need their own space too.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's wonderful. And like I said, I obviously I have kind of a niche, but there's so many other macro photographers that do like amazing insect photography and all sorts of things. And I'm so intimidated by a lot of that work. It's so
oh my gosh, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. Your work is absolutely gorgeous. And that's why I say the macro and the micro and all that stuff, that's why I was so excited to have you on, because macro is just not the flowers and the bugs, you know, it's another element of a scene. And so please don't ever feel that way, because your work is just, I know, and I've met a lot of those photographers. They've been on my show. I guarantee when they're seeing your work, they're just like, whoa, this is cool.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm not lying. You're welcome. I'm so very truthful. Okay, you guys, let's see. Definitely will try this now. Fabulous images here today. Thank you. Barry says thank you. Oh, they should to Deborah. I don't know what they're chatting about, but they've got a lot of eyes going on, and there's a lot of stuff going on. They're very happy. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm just going to remind everybody that we have another show again on the 25th which is 2 weeks from now, and I definitely submit your work. You go to my website, sullivanjphotography.com. There's a macro chat live area. You click on that, and then that's where we're getting the images now. You got to submit them on my website. So Baz, do that on my website. It just keeps things cleaner, because I can't find everything. So, but yes, thank you so much, James. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. And
the pleasure was all mine. Absolutely.
Oh, it'll be so much fun to have you again, for sure. When later on, just think about me. So
sure, absolutely.
Oh, good. And remember, everyone, that your 1,000 words does make a difference. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.